Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're delivering a pretty direct, no-nonsense wake-up call to anyone who kind of feels like life is just passing them by while they constantly delay taking real action. You know the feeling, right? If you've ever felt completely stuck in a holding pattern, well, this explainer is going to unpack exactly why that is, and more importantly, how to actually break out of it.
What the heck am I doing with my life? Honestly, it's a familiar, deeply painful cycle for a lot of us. Waking up late, doom scrolling on your phone, constantly telling yourself, oh, I'll start in just a little bit. But let's be real, that little bit never actually comes. Most people will quickly label this as just being lazy. They'll tell you to manage your time better. But the truth from our source material reveals something way deeper. This isn't a lack of discipline. It's actually a deep-seated fear of growing up. And terrifyingly, a lot of people carry this well into their 30s, 40s, and beyond.
The psychology driving this paralysis is absolutely fascinating. The great psychoanalyst Carl Jung used the Latin term puer aeternus, which literally translates to the eternal boy. You might know it better as Peter Pan syndrome. Basically, this mindset creates a state where you flat out panic every time life asks you to step up and take real responsibility. The absolute hallmark of the eternal boy is this extreme desire for absolute freedom. You want to keep every single door open, every option available, without ever actually committing to walking through one.
But in reality, this intense craving for absolute freedom just leads to living what's called the provisional life. Because you refuse to commit, literally everything you do feels temporary. Your current office job? Oh, that's just a temporary gig to pay the bills until your true genius is finally discovered. That incredibly messy room? No need to clean it up because this isn't your real home anyway. You end up treating your entire existence like some kind of waiting room for a grand destiny that never seems to arrive, mostly because you're never actually building it.
It essentially leaves you living like a spectator, sitting up in the stands just watching your own life pass by. You watch other people throw themselves into the arena, right? They work, they fail, they get married, they struggle. And unconsciously, your ego tells you that you're somehow above their mundane rat race. But here is the harsh reality. Staying on the sidelines? That isn't freedom. It's a psychological shield. You're using it to avoid the terrifying reality of having to start from zero and risking absolute failure.
So, where does this paralyzing fear actually come from? Well, for a lot of folks, it starts with what psychologists call the gifted kid trap. If we look back at childhood, it turns out there's a very real danger in being labeled a special child or a future genius early on.
Let's contrast the school of childhood with the school of life for a second. In childhood, you were likely rewarded for pure potential, praised for natural talent. Learning just came easy. But here's the kicker. The real world doesn't care about raw potential. It only rewards results. It demands persistence, and it forces you to embrace your flaws. For someone who built their entire sense of self-worth around being naturally special, stepping into a world where you aren't instantly great at something, that feels like a direct, crushing threat to your ego.
And this leads to a fascinating yet super dangerous psychological loophole. Basically, as long as you have not started, you still have the right to believe you would definitely become the best. That right there, that is the core function of chronic procrastination. It's an automatic defense mechanism designed to protect your wounded ego. When you delay writing that book or applying for that big job, you keep your dreams perfectly intact. Why? Because an untested dream never actually has the chance to fail.
It's really the modern myth of Icarus. Icarus, believed he was completely untouchable, flew way too high on waxed wings, and crashed hard. When you confuse your untested potential with real achievement, you are playing the exact same role. You can dream of flying high all you want, but if you aggressively avoid the grounded, foundational effort required to survive reality, your grand plans are going to shatter the literal second they touch the real world.
Now, when that gap between fantasy and reality keeps widening, it creates a self-destructive spiral. The eternal boy syndrome naturally generates 3 traps of avoidance.
These 3 traps are numbing awareness, fear of commitment, and a victim mentality. Let's briefly break down how each one quietly and systematically destroys your ability to take control of your life.
Trap number 1 is numbing awareness. Look, we all need to relax, but what we're talking about here isn't just normal entertainment. When you dive into gaming all night or endlessly scroll through short videos to avoid the pressure of life, you are using these screens as a deliberate psychological anesthetic. You're choosing to be a successful hero in a virtual world just to silence the really loud alarm bells of your stagnant real life.
Then we hit trap 2, the fear of commitment.
In the early stages of a relationship or a job, the eternal child is super enthusiastic, but the very second it requires real financial or emotional responsibility, they flee. They feel trapped. And what's worse, they often unconsciously draw in partners who take care of them, slowly forcing those partners to carry the heavy weight of being the responsible adult while they get to remain the helpless person being cared for.
Finally, trap 3 is the victim mentality. Think of the Peter Pan story again. Peter sees the adult Captain Hook as the ultimate evil enemy. Well, in reality, the eternal child views societal rules, tough bosses, and the ticking clock of time exactly the same way. By framing the world and its normal pressures as inherently unfair enemies, you just hand all control of your life over to your circumstances. It gives you the perfect excuse to never act.
But hey, sinking into guilt won't fix the problem. What's required right now is action. So, we are going to map out a tough, highly actionable 4-step path to maturity.
This practical path involves 4 steps: changing your mindset, embracing the ordinary, practicing exposure therapy, and finding outside accountability. This is literally how you build the bridge from a provisional life to an actualized one. Let's dive in. Step 1, we start by changing your mindset on responsibility. The single biggest misunderstanding of the eternal child is thinking that making money and carrying responsibility will somehow turn them into a boring person and kill their creativity. But the exact opposite is true. Responsibility and commitment are not chains. They are the absolutely crucial foundations necessary to make those youthful dreams real. A brilliant idea without the discipline to execute it, that's just a fantasy. Step 2, bravely embrace being ordinary. Because you've always felt special, normal daily routines kind of feel beneath you, right? You have to break this mechanism. Start doing totally ordinary tasks, like folding your laundry in absolute silence without a podcast playing, or just paying your bills on time, and do them with immense seriousness. Taking a normal job and actually doing it well pulls your mind straight down from the clouds. It forces you to directly interact with reality.
Step 3, practice exposure therapy with failure. Since the core fear here is that you aren't actually good enough, you have to actively risk failing. Send out those resumes. Sign up for a class where you know for a fact you'll be clumsy at first. Ask your boss for honest feedback. Exposing yourself to these situations proves to your brain that rejection is not fatal. Your character is built by falling down in real life and getting back up, not by winning in your imagination.
And step 4, the last essential step, find an outside structure that holds you completely accountable. You simply cannot rely on your own willpower right now. The eternal child is way too good at negotiating with itself and making up brilliant excuses to just go back to bed. You need a strict mentor, a demanding boss, or a disciplined community. You need people who will absolutely not pamper your procrastination and will force you to keep your feet on the ground when things get hard.
As we look at how to finally step into reality, please remember this. There is no magic overnight fix. There's no singular moment of inspiration that's going to magically cure you. There is only the daily, sometimes really gritty choice to step out of that imaginary world and face the inevitable scratches of reality.
I actually want to slow down for a second here and leave you with this incredibly powerful warning from Carl Jung. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. Let that sink in. If you continue to avoid life today, the helplessness and regret you build up will eventually become a huge burden that you pass on to your loved ones, your friendships, and even the next generation.
So we end the explainer with this final question for you to consider today. Will you dare to step out of the imaginary world? The difference between someone with real achievements and someone trapped in eternal potential really isn't talent.
Welcome to